put your hands together for Ossia Dwyer. Yeah!
Oh my goodness. Hello, everybody. This is so cool. This is so crazy. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Keep it going for Shannon for letting us take over the barber shop for tonight. Oh, this is so cool. They're like, where do you want to do this? I'm like, well, I want it really small because I'm artistic. And then I just realized I just want it small and intimate because I am autistic. It's just, that's what makes me feel comfortable. This is so cool. I like being around all the chemicals and the hair products. You just take a little snack. Thank you guys for being here. It feels so fun. I just wore my thickest denim jacket. I just wanted to look like your mom going to the Martina McBride concert. She's like, I got one night off, and today's the day, but I still need to wear my Dr. Scholl's. Don't look. I've been very happy recently. I got engaged a little while ago. Yeah, we can be happy. It's good. I'm of legal age. He's of a much older, but not that creepy legal age. It's very tight. I always wanted to marry a gym teacher type, and I nailed it. I got it. That was where I was. I was scooting around. You guys do those floor scooters? I was scooting hard on them. It's going well. It's going well. I love being engaged. We got engaged on Thanksgiving. People tell me that's not a very romantic time to get engaged. Like, why'd you get engaged on Thanksgiving? It's like, well, I am a fat person, so that is the most romantic time of the year for me. Do you guys know fat people holidays? Anyone else wearing maternity clothes just because? You can buy them. They don't ask. You can just get them. It's really cool. I love maternity clothes. I feel like I'm allowed to wear them because I get asked if I'm pregnant a lot. I think I just have a Play-Doh body and I eat a lot of late-night cookies. Ladies, if someone asks you if you're pregnant and you're not pregnant, when they ask you, they often ask, when are you due? So when they ask you when you're due, I like to say, I'm due right now. And you are the new dad. So we're doing this. That's why I'm not allowed at the Target anymore, because it freaked the 16-year-old cashier out. She is, like, not ready for it. I do love maternity clothes. They're so stretchy. They have these really sexy bras with flaps on them. You guys know? I think it's to feed the babies, but also, for me, it's to just, like, feel the air in my hair. It's just, get the wind going through there. Okay, no, you guys did not like that. Not a lot of freaks. Fat people, we have different holidays. You guys might know if you're also gonna pass out from heat exhaustion soon. Fat people like Thanksgiving is our Valentine's Day. And the day after Valentine's Day, when the candy goes on sale, that's our Christmas. So it's just different. It's different if you're not have a staph infection from your thighs rubbing together. It's gonna be intimate. Give it up for Yingling for sponsoring my college-age trauma. Bringing it back. It tastes so bad, but I love it. Me and an unknown comic got engaged on Thanksgiving, and then we went home to my hometown for Christmas. I live in Cincinnati now. I lived in Pittsburgh for years. I'm not from either of those places. I grew up in a very small town in rural Vermont. Yeah. Thank you for serving nothing, barbershop. That is what it deserves. It's a crazy place. Like Vermont, they show you one place in Vermont on the television, right? Because we think Vermont's cool. When we think of Vermont, we think of what? Like Ben and Jerry's and fish and like maple syrup. But like in actuality, for where I'm from, the vibe is more like camo prom dresses and heroin and fatal dirt bike accidents. They keep happening and they haven't taken the dirt bikes away. It's wild. When you get that far north in the US, people do think it's the deep south again. Yeah, do you guys know about this concept about how the cold has rotted their brains? like, kids would drive to my high school on their snowmobiles, and they would have Confederate flags on it, and they would be like, the South will rise again. And I would have to be like, not the fuck up here, it's not going to. It's negative 20 degrees out, what are we gonna do? We can't have a crawfish boil. We can't have a Mardi Gras parade, the ladies' nipples will fall off their body. It's a wild place. I think the map of North America should go different than it is. Like, I think it should go like, it should go Mexico, and then it should go the real South, and then it should go the place where the Wizard of Oz happened and people haven't left for some reason. And then it should go Pennsylvania, the rich part of the North, the South again, and then France right at the top. That's all there is. In the Midwest, you have this idea, it's called body positivity, right? I can wear whatever I want. I can wear this chunky men's jacket that I got from the little boys section of Chico's. I can go to the pool, I can wear a bathing suit. Little boys are not allowed to throw ham at me anymore. That's a rule they made. Did I ask for it? Fuck no, I love free ham. It was getting to be a problem. It was clogging up the filters. The frogs were getting really big. Here in the Midwest, I'm considered a curvy woman. Back home in Vermont, I'm considered hardy and thick enough to survive the winter or bear attacks. And honestly, that makes me feel a whole lot better about myself. I love it so much. Curvy is what we use to sell cars to men with tiny penises. But hardy is what we use to sell soup to football players. And I would much rather be sold to a football player. Sell me to a football player, crotch first. I'll slide right in. No, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. They could not handle this. They could not handle it. I realize I should not have worn fleece-lined shoes up here. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to need no one to hug me after the show. It smells like a raccoon died in my car 4 weeks ago. So let's just keep a radius of 100 feet. If you guys can't tell, I do have depression. Nope, not surprising to anybody? Okay, yes, I have very unmedicated depression. It's really cool. It makes this joke better. I do have depression. There's a lot of things you can do if you have depression, right? There's a lot of resources out there. Like, did you guys know that if you have depression, Applebee's will bring your food to your car for you? Do you guys know about the government program called Applebee's Carside to Go? For women that have been asked to not go into the Applebee's anymore on account of the crying. It's really cool. It makes me feel really happy. I love Applebee's. I love Applebee's so much. Applebee's is my favorite restaurant of all time. Any other B-heads in the crowd? A couple people? Thank you. It's not popular. I'm in my 20s. It's not popular with people in their 20s because that's where all of our parents got divorced at once. If you've been in an Applebee's, you have sat in a booth where people have sat down their child. They said, we're not in love anymore. It's your fault. We're doing the 2 for $20 meal deal, and then we're not a family anymore. It's just, we're done. It's so good. It's like, the ultimate luxury is going to a place where convicts are microwaving your food for you, right? It's like, I could do that at home, but my DUI charge got washed off my record. I don't have a DUI charge if my parents watch this. That's a joke. I am in my 20s. I just turned 27 a little while ago. If you can't tell, it's not going well. It's not going good. I don't know what to do in our late 20s. Like, I don't know if anyone here is in their late 20s. It's a very confusing time. Like, I'm going to have 2 beers tonight, and I'll have heartburn for 5 years. But also, like, I'm not in my 30s, so I can't get AARP or whatever happens. to you elderly people? I don't know what to do. Like, my mind and my body are going opposite ways. Like, my brain is turned to mush, and all I can do is watch TikToks. You guys on TikTok? It's this fun app where every time you open it, it tells you have autism. It's really chill. I don't think I can read because of TikTok anymore. Like, I was at work trying to read an article for the job they pay me for, and I started one paragraph in, and I was like, I just wish this was a teen dancing. That would be really cool. Meanwhile, my body has gone to complete shit. Like, if I don't eat 2 yogurts a day, I do shart myself at work. Yeah, is anyone here on the yogurt diet? No? You guys know the food yogurt? It's really cool. I have to eat yogurt every day. And I used to be able to eat the fun yogurt. You guys know fun yogurt, it has sugar, it has fruit. Sometimes it has cookies that you flip into it. Sometimes it's the activity. I can't eat that anymore. I have to eat the Activia yogurt every day. Yeah, I have to eat the Jamie Lee Curtis old lesbian yogurt every single day to keep my body alive. The Activia yogurt, that's what I imagine the inside of a butt crack tastes like. And I say imagine because I'm a straight woman and I don't know how to do that to a straight man. It's very confusing. I don't know if you've seen a straight man's butt crack recently. They're so long. It's most of their back. Where do we start, ladies? Do we just put a peg in like a battleship situation? Do we wait for the Cheeto dust to come out at us? Nope, that's too gross. Okay. I had a fun experience. I got asked out at work a little while ago. Has that happened to anyone? No one will make eye contact with me after the Cheeto comment. I understand. I didn't do it today. You'd be able to tell on the jacket. I got asked out at work a little while ago. A man came up to me. I was just at my desk, typing away. And he's like, do you want to go on a date with me? And I said, no. And I said no the nice way. I said, no, you fucking idiot. You were at my engagement party last week. Remember I ate too much pizza and I got sick and I got to go home? That's the nice way to say no to a man at work. If I wasn't at work, I would say no the fun way. I would actually say yes to the date, and then I would go to a crowded bar, and very loudly I would say, I'm actually 14 years old with an aging disease. I'm very scared. And then I would get to watch him go to jail. That's the fun way. I said no, and he was really insistent. Oh, who would have thought a man wouldn't take no for an answer? He was like, come on. I'm like, I really can't. He's like, you know what? If you went on a date with me, I would show you a Kentucky good time. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck that means. I assume it means that we get to go to a racetrack and kill a horse. And then we get to cook that horse at an Outback Steakhouse. And then we just lightly make out in the bathroom because his cousin is the manager. And then he lightly makes out with his cousin because it's Kentucky. Might still happen. I might throw it all away for that man. I am a woman. I don't know if you guys heard, but it turns out that the government said we should just chill out and not have rights anymore. They were just like, sit down, bitch, and stop trying. You don't need it. I feel bad because I think it might be my fault. Because I forgot to go to a few of the women's marches. And I forgot to go to the big one where we were supposed to make the hats. And instead of going, I stayed home and I did something with my fiance that we call Fancy Boy Pamper Party. Which means that instead of going to the women's marches and trying to march for my rights, I stayed home and I made a man a full continental breakfast. And then I washed his feet, which isn't illegal, it's just really weird. It's okay. I think women should be allowed to vote. I don't think I should be allowed to vote. I think I've been asked to be choked out too many times during sex to be allowed to vote anymore. Honestly, I've lost so many brain cells. I don't think I should be allowed to pump gas anymore. It feels like it tastes too good. Being a lady is hard. It's difficult. Like, we have to take birth control every day to protect our body. But every time a dog takes a pill, they get a free piece of cheese with it. Just 0 questions asked. I asked my fiance, can you put these pills in this cheese? He's like, we're not getting married anymore. So that's cool, that's cool. He does still buy me cheese. It's an all dairy, no benefits relationship. It's really cool. I work as an engineer during the day. It's a very male-populated field. I used to work at an all-male office. I was the only woman. It was very difficult. It was very difficult for them, I guess. I got to walk into a place where a bunch of middle-aged men try to not sexually harass me every day. So it was my wet dream. It was so cool. They would send me emails. They would be like, hey, buddy, could you get those spreadsheets to me? I respect you. I was like, I'm going to show up at your child's soccer game and tell your wife that you kissed me. It was tough to maintain. I feel like they didn't respect me. And it was difficult because, they were older than me. But I have sucked dicks that are older than them. So I feel like I deserve a little bit of respect. Yeah, it's not a very good joke. I recently learned that that's my dad's least favorite joke that he's ever heard anyone tell. I also learned recently that that's his friend's favorite joke. So, about to be a stepmom. I spent the whole pandemic here in Pittsburgh. I lived in a very small apartment with my fiance. It was really cool until he figured out that I only know how to do 1.5 sexual positions. You guys know the only 1.5 that the female body can make? No? I'll tell you. And I know what you're thinking, and I've seen it too. I've seen adult pornography, but from what I'm seeing, it's mostly cartoons. So they can really draw the Muppets however they want. I think that the female body can only make 1.5. I think it can do 1, which is laying down. And then I think it can do half, which is laying down, eyes closed. That is for when you're tired or you've had a lot of red meat. Maybe it's a special anniversary. Ladies, you can use that. That's a sex tip that I read in a Cosmopolitan magazine I found in a nightmare. So it's up for grabs. We did. We lived together. He's like, we got to do something to spice it up. You got to do something different. He's like, what if you gave me a lap dance? And I said, did you fall down and get a fucking concussion? I can't give you a lap dance. I can't give you a regular dance. I'm agnostic, but my hips are culturally Catholic, so they just go back and forth, feel too much shame, and then say, no, thank you, priest. I felt bad. I was like, I gotta do something. We weren't engaged yet. I didn't have this ring that's stuck on my finger forever because of the spider bite I also have. I'm like, I gotta lock this down. I was like, let me play to my strengths. I'm like, okay, I can't do a lap dance. What am I good at? Maybe I could make him a sexual PowerPoint presentation. Maybe I could make an Excel sheet with a lot of graphs that look like boobs on them. Yeah, it was not an exciting prospect. I was like, I guess I just got to do the lap dance. And I let him pick the music because I'm kind. And he is a very cool guy that's into a lot of fun bands, such as like the Grateful Dead and also Dave Matthews Band. I don't know if you guys know them. They do fun songs that are 20 to 35 minutes long. They do songs that your dad falls asleep in and then wakes back up and be like, oh, this is the good part. I was like, I gotta do it. And I was doing some moves. I was doing some moves that I learned in middle school Zumba. A lot of hip rolls. I was doing some moves that I saw in that movie where the J-Lo, she takes all the strippers' money. No, she takes the man's money. I didn't see that movie. It looked too sexual for me, I'm gonna be honest. I said I can't see that in a public place. This has been truly the best night ever. I'm gonna get out of here soon. I'm happy to be here this weekend. It is my Pap Schmear Eve. Yeah, if you can't tell, I'm full of pap and I'm ready to get it out. I hate going to the doctor. There's ladies in here. Ladies have to go to the doctor one day a year, and we have to get fucking roasted by an old man that knows our home address. It's crazy. Like, you walk into this office in a strip mall, and for some reason the secretary is your ex-boyfriend's mom. And she's like, of course you're here, you slut. And then you have to go into this little room, and they're like, take off your clothes, we bought you a new dress. But the dress is just an old hospital gown, and it's wet because a lady gave birth in it yesterday. They're like, put this on, we want to see your butt crack and your back rolls through one little slit in the back. So you take off all your clothes and you ball them up and you make sure the weird stains in your underpants are face first up. And you have to sit on this cool table. And they make it nice because they put a little thin piece of paper on it. I don't know what that paper's supposed to do. I'm going to tell you, my vaginal pH obliterates that paper every single time. I'm burning right through and I'm stuck. Because what's underneath that paper? It's the metal sandwich making table from Subway. And it's ice cold. Just stuck on it, making a beautiful Georgia O'Keeffe print for them to put on the floor. It's wild. They have you sit down, and then this old wizard comes in, and he's like, I'm going to check you out. And they have you put your feet in horse stirrups. Yeah, right? I wasn't rich enough to ride a horse as a child, and I have very jelly legs, so I have no control over them. I put my feet in those stirrups, they're going back and forth, back and forth. I'm yelling at the doctor, get your head out of there. You're gonna get knocked out cold. He gets his head out, I get control of my legs somehow, and then they're like, now's the fun part, now the puppets come out. This one's a crocodile, and he's come to eat you. They slide that one in, crank you open. They take out the scrambled eggs from the year before. They pack you full of new eggs, probably. I don't know. I'm asleep at this point. Close you up, say, get out of here, whore. 2 weeks later, double HPV. It happens every single time. No, I hate going to the doctor. Every single year, my doctor, he comes up with a new roast for me. Like, I went this year, and he's like, I just want to let you know that you have the heaviest pelvis I've ever seen. And I was like, oh no, is that critical? Am I sick? He's like, no, you're just fucking gross. You guys have been wonderful. Give it up for Shannon again. Thank you.